Hello and welcome. Gorgeous British-French actress Jacqueline Bissett's impressive list of movie credits include The Greek Tycoon, Bullitt, Airport, Murder on the Orient Express, The Deep, and Rich and Famous. And so Jacqueline has worked with some of the biggest movie stars of the last half-century, including Anthony Quinn, Paul Newman, Nick Nolte, Jean-Paul Belmondo, Kenneth Branagh, Marcello Mastroianni, and Christopher Reeve. Back in 1987, she played Josephine de Beauharnais opposite Armand Assante in the three-part TV miniseries titled Napoleon and Josephine. It was the role most recently brought to the big screen by another English actress, Vanessa Kirby, in 2023's Napoleon, directed by Ridley Scott. And it's fascinating to compare the two on-screen characterisations. While Scott's version of the famous couple focused heavily on the battle action, the 6-hour TV miniseries is somewhat more balanced on the relationship. Now, I spoke to Jackie shortly after she'd finished shooting the series and asked her about her approach to the role and her assessment of Josephine.
I don't know whether Denise mentioned to you that I was in Paris a couple of weeks ago and had hoped to get out onto the set.
She did.
Yeah, right. But, a little bit, firstly, about Josephine. I mean, I don't know how much is taught in British schools about her. But certainly in Australia there's not very much known about her apart from the line that Napoleon once delivered to her, or at least allegedly delivered to her. So, I mean, in terms of researching the character, did you in fact spend any time researching the character, or are you simply working from the script?
No, I researched the character. She's too well known to do anything else, to do it another way, especially shooting in Paris.
Of course. So
I would. I mean, it's always makes it so much easier if you have books to look up anyway.
Yes.
The script can only touch on a certain degree of it. It's such a big time and such an important time in history. No, it wasn't easy to find books about her exclusively, but I did find 3 books, and thoroughly enjoyed it. Actually, the process was fun.
What was your preconception of her before you began to sort of seek things out?
Well, I didn't have a preconception. I read the script and I started looking her up.
Right.
So my preconception came from the script, which was, my idea before, and I thought it was a good character anyway, but I just wanted to make sure of the facts of if the script was accurate.
So,
just to check it out before I said really yes.
Right. So what sort of a woman was she?
Well, I think she was a very full woman. I mean, most cases, I only did one scene where I found that she didn't react in a rather modern way, but she was a very feminine woman, I would say, in a normal sense, and that would apply to a woman of most countries, in the femininity in the traditional sense. And a woman who'd been through, she had a very difficult life, I think. She was always, she was brought up in the country on the islands of Martinique. She had a rather a pleasant childhood and was very influenced by nature and sun and birds and flowers and stuff. And this sort of this loving for harmony seemed to carry through her life. She was not a well-educated girl. She was of an aristocratic background. And her lack of education gave her quite a few problems later on.
What sort of problems?
The first man she married wanted a much more sophisticated woman and made her suffer a lot. And Napoleon also suffered with her because he wanted her to write to him more, and she was not fond of this whole sort of process that went on a lot. He was an obsessive writer to her during battles and in camps, and he wrote her 2 or 3 times a day.
Good heavens, really.
And the correspondence is really quite wonderful. I mean, he shows himself as a very romantic man in many ways. Very ardent lover, She was appalled by it all. She really wasn't in love with him when she married him. She married him for reasons of convenience for her children, and fell in love with him later.
Was she, pardon me, was she a very politically savvy woman?
No, she was just savvy as a woman. I mean, she was just a woman, I would say. She was very psychological. I mean, she could understand people well. She had very good instinctive feelings. She always sensed... She actually was one of the last to realize Napoleon's real lasting value. She didn't recognize his genius for quite a long time. But she did know him well, and she did manage him well, I suppose you would say. She had a lot of faults, which in most women he would not have put up with. Like she was very extravagant and very frivolous in some ways, but she had a very, I would say, a strong sense of loyalty and of family kind of values.
What about...
She was a very good friend to her friends.
What about... was she an ambitious woman?
Well, not terribly, no. I would say she quite enjoyed some of the parties. I mean, I think she quite enjoyed that. But she didn't enjoy really the power as such, because her life got stiffer and stiffer. And she didn't like formality, and she was really someone who preferred informal gatherings and lack of pomp and circumstance. And of course, as the court got, as Napoleon got more and more powerful, it got more and more like the previous court of the Revolution. With the prior to the Revolution, it became rather like a royalist court, and she was right in the middle of it, with endless ceremonies and duties and speeches and positions that she had to do as wife of the later the emperor, as the empress. She really didn't enjoy that, but she did love him madly.
But she wasn't really the kind of the woman behind the man, the power behind the man at all.
Well, she had a tremendous influence over him. I don't know, it's hard to say. And she wasn't the sort of pushy woman, I would say, a driving, ambitious woman. She was frightened of his ambition for himself. And she was frightened of it for her because she knew what had happened to the previous people who had ambition. They had been beheaded, guillotined, and she was always frightened that the revolution days would come back. She had been through the situation of losing her first husband to the guillotine, and she'd been in prison herself. And was about to be guillotined when the reign of terror came to an end, and which is when she was let out. But she made it only by a couple of days. But she was very frightened of that, and she'd been through, living with a general, of course. Battle and war was part of her life, and the dangers he went through. She was, of course, worried for him. She was, but she loved Paris. She didn't really want to go off on these trips she went on. She used to visit him from time to time, but it was such an arduous time to travel. I mean, it would take weeks and weeks to go anywhere.
Of course, yeah.
And the carriages were absolutely minute. We traveled, we were working in some of these little tiny carriages. I mean, it's inconceivable that anybody went more than 10 or 100 yards in them. I'm not joking. I mean...
No, I've seen photographs of them. I've seen photographs of them.
But they look wide from the outside. When you're inside, you can hardly stretch your legs out beyond bending them. And they were, you get practically jostled around and bruised and bumped, and it must have been quite something to live in those days.
Yeah. Tell me...
On certain levels. But I see her as a rather a flirtatious, cheerful, sort of funny person with deep emotional kind of highs and lows. Very, very passionate and very capable of great love and great sorrow.
Do you think, although you said you didn't have any preconceptions about her, do you think perhaps that the public at large does have a perception of her as being just the woman in the background somewhere, and that in fact she did play a much greater role in his life and influencing him than we, the average person, might actually understand?
Well, I think she did play influence, because I think she felt people out rather well. I'm sure she advised him on who was on his side and who wasn't. I think she knew that more than he did. He became rather abrupt and bossy, as he got more and more powerful, and he was always working. He didn't like to spend more than about 10 minutes on any meal, and he was, constantly thinking of ways to extend his time so he could do more work. I mean, she was forever fending things off him, and lots of people didn't like to talk to him because he was so. They were frightened by him, so they would talk to her. She was always doing favors for people through him, constantly.
What
Trying to help people out.
What was it specifically about the character in the script that intrigued you or that made you want to do it?
It was just a very good story, mainly. I mean, it better be, if you're going to do a story for 6 hours, it better be a good story.
Yes, of course. It's just that it's...
Story. I mean, there's no point where it flags.
It's just that it strikes me, you know, and this is obviously just one person's observation, but because I suppose I did have this preconception that she wasn't a particularly strong or ambitious woman, but I have a perception of you as an actress playing strong and single-minded women, particularly in the last 7 or 8 years. And it would seem to me that you would bring to that character, in my preconception, that character of Josephine, a much stronger woman than I'd imagined.
Well, I think she had a strong base. I don't think she always used it. You know, I mean, I don't think certainly wasn't a... She changed. She started off quite a very, very vulnerable woman, and she got very hurt in her first marriage, and she decided she didn't want to be married again. She wanted to enjoy the power she had with men, and the times were quite frivolous and quite fun, and she certainly enjoyed all that, and she already had 2 children. She was very concerned for her children, but I don't think she expected to be in the course of... She believed, she was very superstitious. She believed in tarot cards and stuff, and she had been told when she was quite young that she would be more than a queen. And somehow that was an optimistic thing that kept her at times of adversity. She sort of had it in the edge of her mind that somehow she was going to reach some position where she'd be protected, maybe, in one way, but at the same time she was frightened that it would be dangerous.
Right.
I think she's like most people. She's capable of both strength and weakness. I mean, she was a very full person.
Yes, well, clearly. Tell me, has there been any reaction, any sort of negative reaction from the French, who are quite proud about these things, that they've brought in an American and a British actor and actress to play the roles?
Not to my face.
But indirectly?
I don't know. Well, the French tend to think of me as French, actually.
Why?
Well, partly because I worked in France, I have a French name, and partly because I'm partly French.
You are partly French? Oh, I didn't realize that. Aha, well...
And I speak, pretty much perfect French, and if for some reason since I did 2 films in the 70s, with one with Truffaut and one with Philippe de Broca and Belmondo, people have thought of me as French to a large degree.
Oh, well, that obviously does break down the, any resistance, but I'm sure you're well aware, of course, that the French do have an enormous amount of pride in their own.
Yes, I think they do. Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure that this will be criticized, of course, so we're trying to be as, correct as possible, but obviously, everybody does have. I mean, there's many people who talk. You ask them about Napoleon, and they'll talk for 45 minutes without stop. It's amazing. Who knows? And they seem to love talking about him.
Yes. What you've been working on this now for a couple of months, haven't you? What about feature films? What have you done in the immediate past?
I've been working on this for 4 months, and I haven't done much of it. I did this movie, an English film last year called High Season.
Of course, right? Yes.
And that's it.
Jackie is now 79 and still a very busy actress, working in both film and television, most recently in the Amazon original movie Birds of Paradise and a title role in Lauren and Rose. And while Jackie never married, she reportedly had romantic relationships with many eligible bachelors, including actor Michael Sarrazin, Russian ballet dancer Alexander Godunov, and actor Vincent Perez, among others.